I don't know if you've ever had this experience of reading the Old Testament and thinking, wow, my goodness, what an amazing time all these different people must have lived in. All these amazing things that they got to do. You know, there's Moses, and Moses just strikes a stick against the ground, and the Red Sea parts. And all of the Israelites, they walk right through. I mean, what a good day that must have been, you know? This big miracle, the sea parts, you walk right through. You get your steps on your Fitbit. That's a really good day, right? And then you get to David, and David takes down this giant Goliath with a slingshot. And part of me is like, how did he do that? You know, when I was a kid, if I ever had a slingshot, I couldn't get the rock to go, 2 feet. It just dribbles right out of there. It's like, wow, he took down a giant with a slingshot. And then you get to the prophet Jonah, and you read about how Jonah was in the belly of a whale for 3 days. 3 days in the belly of a whale. The late Archbishop Fulton Sheen was given a talk on Jonah once, and someone from the crowd yelled out, "Archbishop, how can we know for sure that Jonah really spent 3 days in the belly of a whale?" And the Archbishop said, "Well, when I get to heaven, I'll ask him." And the man responded, "Well, what if he isn't in heaven?" And the Archbishop said, "Well, then you can ask him." So we read all of these stories in the Old Testament, and then we get to the New Testament, and it doesn't stop. It really only gets better. It culminates with this story of Jesus, God, who decided to take on human flesh, and just like you, just like me, he walked on planet Earth. And he was crucified, but then 3 days later, by his own power, he rose from the dead. He rose from the dead. But that wasn't the end of it. So then we have in the New Testament all these stories, including in our gospel today, where the apostles go out and they do amazing things. So Jesus in our gospel, he says to the apostles, "The harvest is abundant, but the laborers are few. But you will be my laborers. You will go out and you will lay your hands on the sick, and those who are sick will instantly, miraculously be healed. And you will even raise people from the dead. And you will go out, and there are people out there who they need my gospel. They need to know the good news. And you will go out, you will take my gospel to the ends of the earth. And against all odds, you will totally transform this world." And they did it. And I don't know if you've had this experience of reading the Bible and thinking, man, I mean, what amazing times that they lived in. They saw miracles. They did amazing things. But here's the thing. Jesus looks at you, every single one of you, and he says the same thing. He says, "The harvest is great, and the laborers are few. But if you are willing to say yes to me and just commit everything that you've got to me, I promise you, you too will see amazing things." There'll be this point in our lives, every single one of us, when our whole life will be behind us. All of it. It'll be that moment of death, when we're on the precipice of crossing from this life into eternity. And eternity is forever and ever and ever. And we'll be on the precipice of crossing from this life into eternity. And by God's grace and his mercy, we'll find ourselves in heaven. And the question will be, what will you have to share with all of heaven for all of eternity? What will be your story? And I want to take a couple minutes and walk through what this first day in heaven will be like. And this isn't my idea. There's this famous Catholic speaker named Curtis Martin. This is his thing that he shares in his talks. But I want you just to imagine your first day in heaven. And we don't know exactly what it'll look like, but we know some things. There's different images that the scriptures give us about heaven. And one of those images is that it'll be like a banquet, like a wedding banquet. And so let's just kind of roll with that, a wedding banquet. So you get up and you get in, and the first thing on your mind is, wow, this is amazing. I made it. I can't believe I made it. This is awesome. Because a bad day, a really bad day, is when you realize you didn't make it in. But you made it in, and you're looking around, and it's just beautiful in there. It's a big banquet hall, and there's an angel floating by with hors d'oeuvres. And then the lights flicker, and everyone starts to take their seats. And you're looking around for a table. You don't want to look like you don't know what you're doing. So you want to look confident, but you can't find a table that's open. And then finally, across the room, you spot a chair. And so you make your way over. No one takes the chair, so you sit yourself down. And you're thinking, this is good. This is good. I'm here. This is good. All right. Make conversation. That's a good thing to do. So you turn to the person on your left, and they're talking to the person on the other side of them. So you're like, that's okay, that's good. So I just, turn to the person on your right, but they're talking to the other person on the other side of them as well. So you're thinking, that's okay, that's all right. And you look across the table, and there's an older gentleman sitting on the other side of the table, and he's not talking to anybody. So you think, great. And you kind of, lower your eyes and you say, excuse me, sir, hi, what's your name? And he says, my name is Father Ignatius. Oh, Father, it's really good to meet you. The guy next to him kind of chips in, and he says, oh, he's just being humble. He's actually a bishop, Bishop Ignatius. And you think, wow, bishop, my first night in heaven, I get to sit with a bishop. And the other guy says, no, he's being really humble. He's actually a canonized saint. His name is Saint Ignatius of Antioch. And you're thinking, wow, unbelievable. My first night in heaven, and I'm here with a canonized saint. This is amazing. So, but then your mind's racing, and you're thinking, what do I ask him? But this question comes to mind, and it's a good question. And you say, Ignatius, tell me about your life. And he says, yeah, of course, I can do that. And he says, well, I lived in the generation immediately following Jesus. I was what you call a church father. And Jesus, right before he ascended into heaven, he commissioned all of his apostles and all of his disciples, and he said, go forth, make disciples of all nations, baptizing them, and I will be with you until the end of the age. And the 12 apostles and all the disciples at the time, that's what they did. They went out and they made disciples. And one of the apostles was John. And John actually met me, and he made me one of his disciples. Wow, you knew John? I actually lived with him. Wow, it's amazing. I read his gospel once. He's like, I was there when he wrote it. And so you're thinking, wow, that's incredible. So then what happened? And he tells you, well, things were great for some time, but then persecution came. And John was actually arrested. He was put in jail. But before that, I was made a bishop myself in Antioch. I was sent to Antioch. And while I was there, Antioch was actually the first place where Christians were called Christians. And while I was there, things flourished. The church was doing great. But then the Roman Empire made Christianity illegal. And they started arresting all of these Christians. And they actually came all across Europe, into Asia Minor, into Antioch, and they arrested me. And they wanted to bring me back to Rome to try me. And if I was found guilty, I would be put to death for being a Christian. Wow, that's crazy. So what happened? Well, I was arrested, but I figured it was a good opportunity to write letters to the different Christian churches that I was passing through as I was going through Asia Minor and through Europe. And I would write them these letters, and I would try to encourage them. But they wrote back, and they said, Father Ignatius, we don't want to let you die. We're going to come, and we're going to set you free. But I wrote back to them, and I said, no, please don't come and set me free. I get one chance to die. Let me die for Jesus. Wow. Well, then what happened? Well, they kept writing, and they said, Father, we don't want to let you die like all the other Christians die, being killed by wild animals and such. And so I wrote back, I said, well, imagine me like a grain of wheat that gets ground up and crushed up, and it gets turned into flour, and that flour gets baked into bread, and that bread is held in the hands of the priest, and it is turned into the body and the blood of Jesus. Imagine me like that little grain of wheat being ground up in the mouths of the wild beasts so that I can be an offering just like Jesus. Wow. You wrote that? I did. Well, what happened? They brought me to Rome. I was tried, found guilty. I was fed to the wild beasts. And I've been right here ever since. And there's a long pause. And then he asks you the question that you will be asked for the rest of eternity, forever and ever and ever. He says to you, so tell me your story. What's your name again? I'm Jeff of Ohio. And he says, well, Jeff, so what was it like following Christ at the time that you lived? And your mind starts racing, and you're trying to think of something to say, and you're getting kind of sweaty. You don't want people to see you getting nervous. Something comes to mind, and 1 year for Lent, I gave up chocolate. Yeah. I almost made it all the way. Yeah. So that last week's really tough. They start bringing all the Easter candy in, and it's just tough. But that doesn't have to be your story or my story, because Jesus, he looks at each and every one of you, and he says, if you are willing to say yes to me and just commit your whole life to me, trusting in me, I promise that you will actually do incredible things, amazing things that you could not have done otherwise. I've got friends who have decided to go on a mission trip, kind of take a leap of faith and go on a mission trip, and it changes their life, and they do amazing things at that trip. I've got friends who have decided to join a Bible study, just kind of take a leap of faith. Let me see what all this is all about, and it changes their life. I know people who they're not priests. They're not bishops, they're lay people, average people, and yet they say, you know what, I'm gonna pray for people. I'm gonna pray for healing. And they start to pray for people, and not big, crazy prayers, just a little prayer here, a little prayer there. And in time, people start actually being miraculously healed through their prayers. It's like, wow, Jesus didn't only heal 2,000 years ago, he still does today. And Jesus calls each and every one of you on a special, unique mission, which is your mission. You're the only one. If you don't fulfill your mission that he has called you to, nobody else will. He's called you to do incredible things. And it won't always look like crazy miraculous, but he's called you to something. You could work a 9-to-5 job, secular job, and yet you've decided to just give everything to the Lord. And he uses you in a powerful way to be a witness to certain people throughout your career, and it has a radical impact upon them. Or you could be a mother who says, you know what, I'm going to give this everything I've got. And other mothers will look at you and they'll say, wow, she's just so strong, and you're just trying to be a faithful, the persevering, faithful mother. And other mothers will look at you and they'll say, I don't know what she's got, but it's not perfect, and it's really difficult, but I want to be like her. I want to know how she became who she is. And everything that you need in your vocation and in your job and in your particular mission is yours if you're willing to commit yourself totally to the Lord and give him everything that you've got. There's so many things that are amazing about being a Christian, but I think one of the things that we so often fail to recognize is that if you say yes to the Lord with everything that you've got, He will bring you into a mission that is yours, and it will look in all different sorts of ways, but it'll be a way that he'll do incredible things through you, and for you, it'll be an incredible adventure if you're willing to say yes. The harvest is great, the laborers are few, but he's calling you to be one of his laborers. And if you say yes, I promise you, your life will be a story that will be willing to be told in heaven for all of eternity. It will be worth it if you can say yes.